What are the Badlands? Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Mr. Vice President, I'm going off script again, I know, but I just want to personally thank you. We've been through some stuff. We've gone through some of the most complex military operations this country's ever conducted, and your steady hand and your leadership during those was a great source of strength for me. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your character. Thank you for your selfless service. Thank you for commitment. Thank you for being a mentor to me, Mr. Vice President.
It's called the swamp. And you know what happened? And you know what I did? A big favor. I caught the swamp. I caught them all. Let's see what happens. Nobody else could have done that but me. I caught all of this corruption that was going on, and nobody else could have done it. Did I get that one right? Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government, while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first.
This is a president of the United States who is a danger to the republic.
America first.
He knows he's an illegitimate president.
The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans.
The great Trump recovery.
America will never be a socialist country. I will fight for you with every breath in my body.
Russia, Russian, pro-Russian, Russian, the Russians.
Russia.
And I will never, ever let you down.
A dangerous virus is spreading rapidly in China, and U.S. officials are very worried that it could come here.
This is really the worst attack we've ever had. This is worse than Pearl Harbor. This is worse than the World Trade Center. There's never been an attack like this. The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. What they're doing is using COVID to steal an election. Together, we will make America strong again. You know what it's about? Fraud, fake ballots. We will make America wealthy again. They are trying to steal the election.
Now, under the leadership of President Trump, we are fully realizing President Kennedy's prescient view of Special Operations Forces.
We will make America proud again. And watch, please, those mail-in ballots. We will make America safe again. And in millions and millions of ballots, their vote is under what they thought they needed. They're dumping more ballots in there, okay? And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you. God bless you. If we are right about the fraud, Joe Biden can't be president.
Congress, the chair declares the joint session dissolved.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Devolution Power Hour. Hope you guys are having a good week. I know you Floridians are probably not watching, honestly. You got bigger things to worry about. But, but we're praying for you guys. We got a lot of Badlanders down in Florida, a lot of Badlands hosts down in Florida. Right. You guys are on our minds and waiting for updates from all of you once we know that the storm has gone through. So
last I saw, Stormy was grilling. So
yeah, he's like on his pool patio just smoking some chicken or something.
Well, he was a good guy. I liked him.
Yeah, and Zach, like, so this hurricane has been coming for like a week and a half or something. Like, they've known about it, and Zach in our group chat today is like, "Man, it started flooding today. I was completely unprepared. I had to like run between my shed and get sandbags out and everything." It's like, dude.
Yeah, I kind of get it, just in terms of when you're looking at all the headlines and everything, like set to make landfall at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m., right? It's like that's when it arrives. It's like, well, there's a lot of stuff that arrives before the main event.
Like tornadoes. They're having tornadoes on top of hurricanes.
Yep.
Like, Florida sounds terrible now.
I'm saying right now there's like 1.6 million people without power so far.
Jeez.
But I read that it was downgraded before it hit, that it weakened before it made.
Yeah, it's Cat 3
a little bit.
So
it was funny.
That's good.
I saw people saying like, "Oh, what's it called, Milton or whatever?"
Yeah,
Hurricane Milton now a Cat 6. I'm like, pretty sure there's no such thing as Cat 6.
They were gonna have to invent it for this one.
Yeah,
I did see people being like, "I am not being taken out by something named Milton."
You know, we could get into the conspiracy side of this, or if you want to get into the conspiracy side of this, go watch our episode on Monday of Baseless Conspiracies, because we talked about the weather seeding and geoengineering and everything. I don't know what you guys believe, but if
I only follow whatever Greta tells me, and I haven't checked her feed. I don't know if she's told everybody how dare them or anything, but she is the only person I take climate advice from.
She's probably got herself like handcuffed to a light pole in Tampa right now, right? Protesting this thing.
Yeah,
I'd imagine.
She's en route in her private jet.
Yeah,
I think she was recently spotted at a falafel.
Oh, gosh.
I'm not kidding. I saw a viral video of her eating a falafel, and people were arguing over whether or not it was a veggie falafel.
Oh my goodness,
these people.
That's fitting for where we're at.
I actually feel bad that I saw that, and sorry that I told y'all about that, because what a waste of terrible, useless information.
Yeah. Apology not accepted. That was rough. But anyway, on the conspiracy side of things, we've been talking about, this upcoming election.
Mm-hmm.
What if they use this and pull the blank in Ukraine, and like, we're not going to have an election until everybody can vote? Because now we got North Carolina, then Florida. Like, what if it just disrupts the voting mechanisms, guys?
Well,
they're already seeding that.
Are you segueing us into that 3 scenarios at the Supreme Court article? Because it kind of references that potentiality, I think, in scenario 2 or 3.
I could segue to that, but first I should segue into our first sponsor. And there's no real good way to segue into that.
He means hard cut to our sponsor, and then we will smoothly transition into a peaceful episode.
If your home is destroyed in a hurricane, you probably want to reach out to American Financing. I mean, that's a bad joke, but they are our first sponsor of tonight's show. So mortgage interest rates are dropping and are now in the 4s. If you've been waiting to figure out how to get your finances in order, you need to call our friends at American Financing today. A lot of us are carrying really high credit card balances that charge us 20% or more each and every month. It's time to get rid of those. American Financing's salary-based mortgage consultants are helping homeowners just like you tap into their home equity to get out of high-interest debt. They're saving their average customer $800 a month by doing this. And with rates dropping, the decision is really easy. All it takes is a 10-minute, no-cost, no-obligation phone call to find out how much you can save. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. Call American Financing today, 866-889-5154, or visit americanfinancing.net/devolution. That's 866-889-5154, or americanfinancing.net/devolution. Disclaimer, NMLS 182334. NMLSconsumeraccess.org. APR for rates in the fours start at APR 5.672% for well-qualified borrowers. Call 866-889-5154 for details about credit costs and terms. There we go. Now we can segue. So if hurricanes disrupt the election,
there was a real piece of, I think, what the hurricane is hiding. There were actual reports of bull sharks in the streets of Florida.
Really?
So yes.
Show me one.
Which all right, I'll find it.
A report.
Well, I mean, could I stretch some guy said it?
Nope.
As the report?
You said report.
But he was in Florida.
Report.
That guy reported. Either way, if true, if I can confirm on air, I think we've discovered what's really going on here.
Sharknado?
This is exactly.
We're going to see a Sharknado documentary here soon after this storm, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But keep going. I want to see the report, man.
Thought we wouldn't catch him. Bull sharks. So I'm gonna find this.
You got to write this report quick.
Yeah. One of my many
on the Burning Bright Substack.
All I've got so far is baby bull shark found in lake after Helene, which is kind of sad. That makes you empathize with the shark. There was a guy on Twitter that said there were bull sharks in the streets. So
okay, well just believe anything anybody says on Twitter. I hear it's
how Batman dealt with Superman. Even if there's a 0.1% chance he could go bad, you have to know how to deal with it. If it's even possible there are bull sharks in the streets right now, people have to be prepared for it. We already know there's alligators.
But the people aren't in the streets right now because the hurricane's coming through.
But if they were, mincemeat for bull sharks and alligators. And massive hurricane as well. But also sharks. Anyway, continue.
Well, I'm still waiting for you to find the report.
I can't find it right now, right? I'm gonna find it. Some guy said it.
Okay. This is good. Speaking of poor reporting, what we should start with is the Steel Dossier article, because this is such a weird one. It's so random to me. The one thing that I thought of when we were off air, because we talked a little bit about this off or before the show, was there's that book that just came out pretty recently by the people on Robert Mueller's team, right? They came out with this book, Interference, the inside story of Trump, Russia, and the Mueller investigation. And then very shortly thereafter, like less than 2 weeks, we get this. Steele himself, Christopher Steele. I'm behind the Trump-Russia dossier. We gave the FBI more than people know. And the headline, in my opinion, was a little misreading. We're not going to read through the whole thing because he didn't really like. A lot of this seemed like this is just my opinion. I think misinformation is bad. Trump's bad, Russia bad, all these things about everything that's bad. But Kyle, your takeaway, if you want to go with this, what was good? Go ahead.
So I think this is Robert Steele pitching his new book, which he does at the very end. He's on a book tour right now, and he's coming to America unless we re-elect Donald Trump, and then he lets us know that he will not be returning to America if we re-elect Donald Trump. But this article is garbage in the first few paragraphs, and that's fine because later on the next section he gives an apologia for the Steel Dossier and how it was controversial and it wasn't as well received as he would have liked, and he misplaced his trust in a close associate of John McCain, and he wished he had talked to David Corn a little bit differently, and he wished he had done things a little bit different, whatever. And how that Steel Dossier, this isn't how we usually do stuff at my intelligence business, but this was a rush job for our American clients. I think there's a lot of signal and some good nuggets in this article. I think it is meant to pitch his book, but that's not actually the priority. Before the show, I said that was his priority. It's not. I think that's actually the vehicle. I think his real priority here is to tell us, and specifically to tell his swampy friends, two things. One, the FBI has more material than has been released. And I think he means that as in material on himself and on his swampy friends, not more material on Trump. It's presented in a way that we can infer that it's material on Trump. But
Right.
I don't think that's what he's saying. And the reason I say that is because the very next sentence after the very next thing after he says about there being more stuff is that James Comey sabotaged our initial efforts. He blames James Comey for losing the 2016 election for Hillary, which is something that me and a lot of other people say because we don't think James Comey is a black hat. We think he's on the Patriot side. And right here, Christopher Steele saying the same thing because he knows what James Comey did.
Can I add something really quick to your point about him having information on Trump? Like, if there was any derogatory information on Trump, it would have come out already. They've looked for
In the last 8 years.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that.
Come out.
Which is that's a great point because that's another very rational way to deduce that this is information not on Trump. This is information on his swampy friends, and that headline is like a klaxon, an alarm saying, "Hey guys, look!" He literally says this in here, if Trump wins again, if he's reelected, he is going to declassify a bunch of stuff. And we should be very afraid of that. He says it right. Where is it? It's right in here.
There's still some
information we passed on to the U.S. government system that hasn't yet come out and is vulnerable, particularly with projects that we've worked on since the dossier. See, it's not about Trump. It's about him. And guess where he's working too? Look, Ukraine. Orbis is still active in this area of Russia interference. We work a lot around Ukraine and from our commercial clients since the Russia invasion.
I have it highlighted, the part you're looking for.
Now, isn't it funny too that this is coming out the same day same day and a half as the Putin, Trump
and the COVID test?
Yeah.
Yes, and Susan Rice, and also the FBI agent Asha is tweeting about this and how Trump and Putin's phone calls are probably recorded. So anyway, right here he says, we are fully aware that were someone like Trump in office, and particularly him, then there would be a lot more declassification activity. And so I really think this is signal to the swamp, guys. You have to stop him from getting in. And I like, if you take what we call a defected view sometimes, if you pull way back and look at the forest here, and not just one forest, but a few forests, you see this Russiagate, Spygate forest cropping up and saying, guys, there's problems. There's you see people from the Mueller team, people from retired FBI, people in the press industry who were colluding with the Spygate plotters and Hillary Clinton that are sounding the alarm over Trump getting back in office. And then there's all these people around Kamala who are trying to justify her failing campaign. And then these old Democrat and Democrat intelligentsia media DC people saying Biden is actually sabotaging Kamala right now, and she's headed for defeat. This is really bad. I think you're seeing the self-organizing collective, as I think Cliff calls it, the SOC or whatever. I think you're seeing that right now in the media, and they're all sending up flares. And that Christopher Steele piece is one of those.
They're panicking. They're literally throwing everything they can at the wall right now, and that's including recycled Russia garbage. And so the story you mentioned, I didn't think we were going to get into it, but we might as well since we're here. Let me just play this video quick.
Is covering the Trump campaign in Pennsylvania. There at the Kremlin is now weighing in.
That's right, Lester. A Kremlin spokesman telling Reuters that Russia did accept shipments of COVID testing equipment from the U.S. in the early part of the pandemic in exchange for Russian respiration devices. Tonight, a former senior Trump administration official tells NBC News this was part of a broader effort to support other foreign governments with supplies, and that Trump liked to personally call leaders to go over the supplies being sent. Woodward reported that Trump sent the tests for Putin's personal use, and that the two have spoken as many as 7 times since Trump left office.
Yeah, so the two things here. Trump allegedly sent COVID testing stuff in exchange for respirators, but they were for Putin's personal use. That's interesting for 2 reasons. One, how has this not come out yet? If it's even true, and if it is true, don't you think Putin could have gotten his own personal testing kits? That seems weird to me.
I think the number one thing to remember about this story, the COVID test story and the Putin-Trump phone call story, is that the source is Bob Woodward. And Bob Woodward is a known professional disinformationist. He is one of the most popular and like off-sided and paraded around hack job professional disinformationist. He could teach courses on it and probably does. He's where all of the disinformation about Milley comes from, all the disinformation about military and Trump using the military to try and hold on to power on J6, that comes from him. And then this stuff comes from him and a whole bunch of other stuff. You can just look up Bob Woodward, look up the titles of his book, and that's what he does, is put out disinformation, which is then all of these people run a circle jerk with it.
The part that seems true, though, is the COVID equipment stuff, because the Kremlin claimed that they did send it back and forth. The part that they're denying is the 7 phone calls. And honestly, the 7 phone calls seems like it would be more true than the COVID testing thing.
Well, John, if you want to share my screen, I saw this Business Insider. I just really loved this headline, and I'll actually connect it to the Steel article. The subhead in that Steel article that you guys were scrolling toward is Ukraine and the ongoing Russian threat, right? Kyle mentioned Russia in that one. And this Business Insider headline, Trump's close relationship with Putin could come back to haunt the U.S. When you're talking about the self-organizing collective, I call them the archipelago, which is, if the deep state was as coordinated or as in control as they once were, they don't have to send signal flares up in the form of headlines, right? This is why I call them an archipelago during the Biden term. I think before that, they were much more coordinated. Now they're having to coordinate their messaging and warnings in the public eye. And Business Insider here, I think this is the signal. It's what would the deep state be worried about that connects to the Steel's part of that, right? What are they worried about? Are they worried about COVID tests? Are they worried about Trump being a dictator? No, they're worried about the information that Russia has on some of their operations, specifically Steel, et cetera. And they're particularly worried that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, as John said, have been in communication. Was it 7 times? Was it 17 times? Was it 0 times? Who fucking knows what it was, right? I have confidence that Trump and Putin have been in communication, and obviously the deep state is very concerned that they've been in communication. So when you tie Trump, Putin, and then the word declassification, as you said, Kyle, it's pretty interesting of what the enemy is trying to program everybody about what they fear.
And we bought ventilators and a whole bunch of other stuff from Russia during COVID. And it was like this big diplomatic like gift between the two countries. I would not be surprised if Putin and Petrov are referencing that there was some sort of care package sent to Russia, and it wasn't literally from Trump. And so Trump is saying, no, that's not true. We never did that. And the media is reporting it or characterizing it as it was this personal gift. But it also could be possible that Dmitry Petrov, who is another one of Spygate. He's a Spygate person. He was press person during all of Spygate. He's been there with Putin this whole time that Putin's been in power, I think. I would not be surprised to see him toying with U.S. media and politics and just saying what he said in order to drive the conversation and being like, we deny the phone calls. We agree about the COVID test. And so he counters Trump and he keeps the argument and discussion going, because I don't think Russia minds watching U.S. media spin themselves out and talk themselves to death about nonsense. I think they sit back and laugh at it. Just like Trump sits back and laughs at it when he throws something out and the media chews on it for 2 days. And the whole time it's a lure or it's nonsense and distracts them.
Well, think about it. I mean, when the Russiagate stuff first launched, right? We're in the middle of a narrative warfare. We all understand that. When that first launched, that was like very impactful. I don't even think Q had started at that point. Like the counter psyop stuff was not in place, but they ran with that. Like Adam Schiff was coming out of briefings, classified briefings, saying, "Oh, we got evidence. We got evidence. Trump is colluding with Russia, guys. This is so serious." Then the Mueller report drops, nothing burger, and like we are years and years removed from all of that, and yet they're still like Trump Russia guys, just keep that in mind. Trump's still colluded with Russia. It's not working anymore. And so I think when these stories play, I think it's a good thing for Trump. And so I could see Russia wanting those narratives too, because it helps Trump.
Could see that. I think
also,
it's because it's not over. I think it's because it's the Russiagate is not over.
From Durham.
We have half the story. The other half is not fully developed and played out yet. And that's another reason why you're seeing them stick their heads up and go, guys, there's a problem. And that's another reason why, to your point, John, that Putin and Petrov might be like, let's just watch them run around and play for a little bit, because we know what's coming in Trump's next term.
And before you go, Bernie Bright, remind me to talk about what you said earlier about the journalists, like them being cut off from each other. Okay, go ahead.
I'll make a note. So on that point, Kyle, kind of a similar direction I was going to go in with this. One of my quote unquote jokes that I've made for a couple of years now is Russia collusion was real, and that's a good thing. Like just inverting what the enemy says. And that's kind of where I take it. That could go in many different directions, but generally what I mean is from a devolution perspective and from, I'll say sovereign alliance, international Devo, whatever, coordination between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, we believe there is coordination, right? And this is kind of a little bit of a satanic thing and a bit of a psyop thing that the deep state does, that we know they do, where they can kind of grant themselves some degree, when you rewind to the Russia collusion narrative deployments, they can grant themselves some degree of plausible deniability if they know there is coordination between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. They know Trump can't completely refute that there is any. They just created a totally false story about what that collusion is, right? Like if, in other words, similar to some of my theories on Dong Jingwei and Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, was this a defector or was it a defector? Hey, here's the boat. Like, go over there, meet our friends. I think that's a lot of what's going on with Russia. If the deep state is what we think it is, and if there is coordination among sovereign actors in some sort of an alliance, but Trump, Putin, etc., there's coordination, there's communication. Well, guess who's going to know that? The deep state. So I go all the way back to the Russia stuff and say, yes, they made up a bunch of bullshit. They fabricated huge swaths of the Steel Dossier. But the baseline foundational claim of collusion with Russia, the Trump campaign, is true, in my opinion. There was collusion between Trump and Russians, probably to get information on criminal actors in the United States government. I'm not saying that Trump needed the Russians right? But there is absolutely intelligence sharing, just like the deep state will be the first ones to tell you that there's intel sharing between the Five Eyes nations, who happen to be the ones that are very worried about the same sort of collusion between Trump, Putin, and Xi. They were kind of seeding that. Why Russia? I think it's because they were poisoning the well all the way back, so that what Steele, to your point earlier, Kyle, might be signal flaring in that article when he's bringing up the Russian threat in the context of D-Class, he's saying the Russians have the information, so they've tried to poison the well to the American people that anything the Russians come out with or that could be traced back to Russian intelligence is disinformation. It's not to be believed. I think that's at least part of what's going on.
I only disagree with that last part. That's the only part I disagree with, that very last part. I think he's literally saying that the FBI found out more about our operation than what is in the Mueller report or the Durham report. And Christopher Steele knows that. And he's like, the weaponized justice system thing is real. And if Trump gets reelected, he's going to bring that to bear, and it's going to come all the way back to our operation in 2016.
I don't think it would have been the FBI.
Well, that's what he literally says.
I know.
That's what he literally says.
Well, do you believe what he literally says in the Newsweek article? Like,
it fits with everything else.
What he says, but like in context of what you said about there's more like people they know. Like, I don't think he's referring to them. Like, I don't think he's afraid of what the FBI knows. He's afraid of what the White Hats know. I mean, maybe there are some of them.
That's what I mean. We're saying the same thing.
Okay, maybe. What you said there, Bernie Bright. I don't think Trump actually colluded with Russia prior to the election. I think any of that stuff would have happened after he got in office.
Well, what I mean is just, I mean, maybe you're saying the same thing, but what I mean is not about the election in particular. I don't think that the Hillary stuff and all that was this coordinated campaign between Trump and the Russians. That's what the story of the Steel Dossier is, right? It's all this Russian election interference.
Yep.
But what I'm more saying is that on a baseline level, I believe that the plan to take down on the base, sort of surface level, it's a large-scale criminal network that infiltrated the United States government, right? And we believe infiltrated many governments around the world. I think that the plan to start going against that criminal cabal probably didn't start in 2016. It probably evolved after that. But I think these leaders, the people who started opposing this cabal all around the world, were in communication with each other. I don't think Mohammed bin Salman just on a whim came out in 2017 and imprisoned, all the Saudi princes, right? I think there was coordination between these guys beforehand. So what I'm saying is, if the deep state knew that there was some coordination on a totally different project between Trump and Putin, the Russia story was their attempt to poison the well on any future information that might come out that they could tie back to Russia, right? The best gift that they would want if Trump starts declassifying information in the future is if Steele and company are saying, well, they got that from the Russians, the Russian side of things, they're going to try to discredit any information that may have come through those sources. It's just a theory, but I sort of think there's a reason they targeted Russia in particular.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that they've been the boogeyman for years. Like they were already building Russian, like a dossier against another candidate. Was it Cruz? I can't remember who the other candidate was. Rubio?
Yes. Yeah, it was originally Cruz. It was McCain and what's his name? McCain's friend that was the go-between, like Paul Singer? Singer?
Yeah.
And then that's the connection to Newstar and Rodney Jaffe.
Yeah.
They were all spying. You have to include that Jaffe and all of that Clinton McCain network were spying on the Obama White House, and through the IP contracts and the DNS contracts that Jaffe had, and then he had the connections with DARPA. And I think they might have been pilfering technology and selling it, but it had to be Russia because Hillary already had corrupt relationships with Russia.
Yeah.
Well,
she
with
already
Russians, and she wanted to go to war with Russia.
And remember, there was the reset. It was because she was going to reset relationships, and after that, like it was she reset the swamp with Russia is what she was doing, and resetting the swamp in Ukraine is what they were trying to do. But it always had to be Russia because Trump and Putin were going to be anti-swamp, I think, and Bibi thinks too. And so to drive a wedge between them before they could get together on their anti-swamp initiatives, they accused them of colluding preemptively. So
by the way, that
polarized them.
A little subhead that I didn't point out in that Business Insider one, the reason that struck me too is they kind of gloss right over the COVID crap that is how this deployment came out from Woodward. What Business Insider says is that the relationship between Trump and Putin has been a source of controversy. Analysts say Trump could broker a Ukraine peace deal on terms favorable to Russia. So now we're getting to the point where they're starting to tell the American people exactly what they're worried about is that Trump is going to do exactly what we've been saying for 3 years now. He's going to come to the table, and the peace deal he's going to broker is going to be the exact one that Vladimir Putin proposed.
Did you see their new pitch for Ukraine peace? They're calling it a Western Germany solution. So they want it's Luhansk and Donetsk are going to go are going to go to Russia, and they're going to have an imaginary little wall, and it's exactly what we've said the whole time, but they're christening it this East-West German solution to the Ukraine war.
Wow.
And I think now that they've given it that they're pitching that term, if it goes over well enough, that'll be the term. And to me, they're floating out trial balloons to see how they come up with the narrative and get that narrative to work as best as they can get it to work.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay, what you said earlier, Bernie Bright, about them having to communicate through the media,
Headlines
stuff like
and stuff.
this,
Yeah.
because they've been cut off. Okay. If that were true, which I totally agree with you, I think they've been cut off in a lot of ways, and so this is how they're doing it. But why are they afraid of communicating in any other fashion? Because somebody's likely monitoring that stuff or
Right.
got watching that stuff. And it reminds me of two things. One of them is something I wrote about a while ago, and these two things are very connected. The other thing is something that just came out like a week ago or so, 2 weeks ago, and just posted about it today. But the first one is Schiff's amendment, right? Schiff's amendment that he proposed to the 2022 Defense Authorization Act was an interesting one because he wanted to make sure that any evidence gathered by the military domestically would be excluded from any form of a trial, hearing, other proceeding in any court, grand jury, department, office, or agency, regulatory body, legislative committee, or anything. Why would Adam Schiff be worried about this? This shouldn't be going on in the first place. But then it was brought to my attention. I don't remember who tagged me on it in Twitter, and I started reading through it, and it's pretty darn interesting. We got this new update. I gotta find where the hell I have it. Hold on, I have so many tabs open right now. 2013, 2022, 2017. Is this the one? Okay, this is the one. A new Department of Defense directive on intelligence and intelligence-related activities. I find this very interesting for a couple of reasons. Now, the mainstream media, Alex Jones, InfoWars, people like that, they're running with this, talking about this new memo is allowing lethal force by our military. Okay. It does technically do that. There's multiple versions of this. This is updating the old one. The old version doesn't include any talk about this. And it does say assistance in responding with assets with potential for lethality or any situation in which it is reasonably foreseeable that providing the requested assistance may involve the use of force that is likely to result in lethal force. If the military is being called in for any sort of domestic like stuff, there's always going to be some sort of threat of lethal force. Like they carry guns around. They're here to quell an insurrection, right? That's what the Posse Comitatus Act is all about. Like, I think this is kind of just saying the quiet part out loud. You know what I mean? Like, this is kind of obvious thing to me. Like, it's not like they wouldn't be allowed to use
power projection. Yeah, where when you put military in a zone, you're putting literal power projection into a response situation.
Yeah, it's not like prior to this memo coming out, the military was going to be called in to quell a protest or insurrection, and they weren't going to be allowed to use lethal force. Like, this is not giving them that power, right? This is just kind of codifying some things, pointing some things out. The part that I found interesting was this one. Let me find it now. I already lost it. No, hold for processing. Okay, right here. So when they're talking, and this is just about intelligence stuff, the defense intelligence components will only conduct or provide support for the conduct of covert activities. So these are two separate things. They will conduct their own covert activities, or they will provide support for covert activities. And then these are the three things. In times of war declared by Congress, so standard, during a period covered by a report from the president to Congress in accordance with Public Law 93-148. This is the insurrection stuff. And then this third one is the one that's notable to me: when such actions have been approved by the president and directed by the Secretary of Defense. So these are three different scenarios. And the third one is like, it's got a very devolution-y feel to me. Like, that's devolution. That's what I think happened with devolution. And then also one more thing, and I'll pass it off here. At the very beginning of this policy, it's talking about the DoD intelligence and intelligence-related activities will be conducted in accordance with this issuance, applicable laws, executive orders, presidential directives, and the DoD stuff. If you go back to the 2017 version, it does not have that, so I just want to find it. Or I'll find it while you guys, if you guys want to talk on this, because I have so many tabs, I'm never going to find this. Hold on.
Go ahead, Kyle, if you have something.
I think this has to do with military assisting law enforcement in combating cartels, MS-13, human trafficking, things like that, especially on the border, because I mean, we know that the U.S. military does assist in some ways, but I think this is assisting to the point of troops on the ground and actually getting into engagement with cartels across the border where it's violent. And there have been instances of that. And it's been a question of how can we respond, with what force can we respond? You know, it's an international incident, literally. So, and you can't just have the military deciding to shoot across into Juarez.
Right.
And like without them like having some sort of clearance, like, okay, are we actually cleared to return fire because we're getting shot at from across the border? And there's been many instances where they've been getting shot at from across the border. So I think that's what immediately that's what this strikes me as having primarily to do with. It does take a focus early on with saying when DOD is deploying personnel to assist law enforcement, here's the things that you follow and who has to order what. So I think it's breaking down that so that they can go and assist in those types of scenarios and contingencies. I don't know that I read it as Devo-y, but we're not privy to everything it says.
This is strictly for intelligence stuff.
Yeah, so to me, it just automatically strikes me as probably having to do mostly with cartel, border, DHS, things like that. Which it happening now is like flies in the face of what you think Biden's border policy is and what they would be doing about the border. Supposedly they're not doing any border enforcement, but then you see something like this.
Yeah, well, and that's what actually does feel Devo-y to me, even taking everything you just said, Kyle. That's where I was going to go with that, actually, is... it's interesting. However bad the situation actually is, we've obviously seen all these headlines about Train de Aragua or whatever it's called, Venezuelan cartel. There's all these different cartels in Colorado, specifically, like you mentioned, Texas. And one of the interesting things about some of the reporting on the Colorado gang situation, I know Ash was writing quite a bit about that, is local law enforcement. They were interviewing a DHS or Border Patrol expert who's dealt with cartel operations in the past about the Colorado thing. And his main sort of warning was American law enforcement is not only not experienced with these kind of guys, they are not equipped to handle any kind of situation against these guys. Like, his whole thing was, if a cartel has taken over an apartment complex, you don't send a cop over there because that's a dead cop and his whole family is dead. Which, by the way, this morning in a southern city in Mexico, the new mayor was decapitated right after he took office, and his head was used as a hood ornament by a cartel because that's kind of what these people do. So if you've got military involvement here, ever since going back all the way to the Q drops when it's talking about MS-13 and all this, we've theorized for years that if and when Trump does get back in there, what's the real reason that these more organized criminal outfits are being imported or allowed to come into the U.S.? And you would not want U.S. law enforcement to be responding in that situation. You would want military intelligence leading military special forces, probably, in any kind of response situation.
I'm just looking through definitions here for the intelligence-related activities, because this is what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the one that's like sticking out to me right here. Conduct intelligence-related sensitive activities. And I'm looking through this other DOD to see. Because I don't know how much of this is border related, because I mean it definitely could be if they're doing border stuff.
Well, right there, I was reading that paragraph as BB was talking, and you were reading through it. I could tell, and that strikes me as whenever the military borrows a drone from when Border Patrol borrows a drone from the military, which we've seen happen before. I remember it happening in 2020. And it was kind of controversial that was used.
Yeah, during the protests.
This could also be applied to many
that would fit if they're using military drones to survey, do recon on the border, then they would there would be some sort of
good points in chat as well. Trump is might be some sort of signal. I'm not saying it's related to this or not, but Trump's next stop is Colorado on Friday. And if you don't think Trump is going to talk about cartels in U.S. states when he's in Colorado, in fact, the media is, I was reading this morning looking for brief articles, the media is totally shocked and kind of flabbergasted that Trump is in Colorado because they don't get it, from a traditional campaigning perspective. They don't think it makes sense. They're like, there's no way he's gonna even make a dent here according to their metrics. So why is he there? Well, maybe he's signal boosting cartel situations.
I'm feeling optimistic about Trump's chances in Virginia, and I'm feeling optimistic that he can make New York somewhat competitive.
Yeah, it all comes down to the question of how much of
right.
our election infrastructure has been secured and fixed, But there's some interesting stuff happening in that front too. Georgia just subpoenaed all of 2020's Fulton County records. Like that's a bold move. Curious to see if anything comes of that and if it comes in time. I'm still confused. I can't remember who I saw on Twitter talking about this. The push for like voting early and like mail-in ballot stuff and by the Trump team. It just seems counterintuitive to everything they talked about in 2020. And it just keeps me thinking like 2020, they were afraid of this stuff because they knew it was going to be used for cheating. And now we want as much of that as possible. It's like, let's break the system. Let's overload the system. But yeah, we'll see. We're 30 days away and we're already talking about our coverage for Election Day. Hopefully you two gentlemen will join us for part of that. But we got Ash putting a list together of guests. It's going to be very similar to our midterm coverage that we did. Should be a fun time. So make sure you guys watch your elections and tell your friends. Watch it here on Badlands.
It's like the first month of Badlands. That's funny.
Oh shit! You know what? I think like in 2 days is our anniversary. Tomorrow, the 10th, right? Or is it the 11th?
I think it was the 11th. Maybe it is this week, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me look here. It was 2022 October.
10 years.
Yeah, it was the 10th. It was tomorrow because it was a Monday. Me and Zach did Baseless Conspiracy. So tomorrow, guys, happy 2-year anniversary.
Nice.
I didn't get you anything.
Yeah, we'll cue the SpongeBob meme. Like, all right, 2 years. I'm gonna head out. All right, guys.
Anyway, that's the only really notable thing about that. I'll keep doing some research because it refers to so many different things. There was one other one that I thought was interesting. I pointed out before the show, just because there's a familiar name here. This came out yesterday. Military Criminal Investigative Organizations, Special Victim Investigation and Prosecution Capability, October 8th. And this was approved by Robert Storch. And it has to do with special victim. Where's that? Is it covered special victim offenses? This is what it's having to do with. And again, I haven't read the whole thing, but it just seems interesting when it comes to like child predators, human trafficking, all that stuff. It has to do with adult sexual assault, domestic violence involving sexual assault or aggravated assault with grievous bodily harm, and then child abuse involving child sexual assault or aggravated assault with grievous bodily harm. This is the military, guys. Like,
yeah, I mean, this stuff goes back to a lot of what drew or activated a lot of us in the info war during the Q stuff. Into the military is the only way. I know there's a lot of readings of that term for good reason, because I think that there's a lot of applications for it. I mean, we were just talking about that last document where Kyle and I are thinking about cartels, but I mean, there's a reason that these are frameworks, right? That can be applied in all different situations. But in terms of the crimes against children, sexual crimes and everything, we're talking about military. I mean, why? It feels like, I mean, you don't go out of your way to change policy, tighten policy up regarding military enforcement there, unless you're talking about large scale or highly precise specialized operations, right? It's kind of the two opposite ends of the spectrum the military would be necessary for. Either international, highly specialized operations that you need special forces for, or mass scale, huge operations that law enforcement cannot conduct on their own. And that goes to all of the trafficking stuff that we know is ubiquitous.
I think that document relates to dealing with cartels as well. And I think putting the two documents together and then adding in the ingredient of Trump telling us, what is Trump telling us he's going to do when he's back in office? He's going to round up illegals and he's going to evict them. So if Trump is launching a massive law enforcement operation to remove illegals from our country, and then they're going to need assistance, and where are they going to get assistance from? Probably the military. So what is happening? I see DOD getting ahead of Trump coming back into office and doing a giant roundup of all these illegals. And so they're putting out these directives to say, okay, when we have to deal with these sorts of situations where we back up law enforcement and they're dealing with these types of victims or these types of targets or this type of intel, here are your guidelines.
On that point, Kyle, John, want to share my screen here? We may have brought this up on the show before. It doesn't stop in the U.S. What you just said, Kyle, makes me think of the macro, large scale, and John has talked about the Eisenhower model, right? Large scale deportation. Trump isn't going to stop there. He's also talking about highly specialized international. I knew there was a reason I was thinking of highly specialized international kill squads. It's because Trump literally framed it that way and said, oh, no, guys. I hope you didn't have it twisted. We're not going to kick the cartels out of the United States. We're going to hunt them down where they live and kill every last one of them. And I believe him. And I think Mexico, if you don't think the Mexican people are going to be on board with that, you should take a look at their news.
John was a pitcher, and for our 2-year anniversary of Badlands, he just pitched us a strike right down the middle, and we knocked it out of the park. Home run, both of us back to back. Yep. He the whole time we were thinking these two little DOD directive EO type documents. This is John. This is gonna be all about John. He's the one who likes these documents. But really, they were a disguise coming from behind the back, out of the glove at the last minute, right down the middle, over the plate pitches to us. Home run.
Well, as part of John's directive, he's kind of like Gandalf. He's not allowed to interfere too directly into what's going on.
I still think it's more than just the border. Like, I'm reading through more of this.
We're not talking about the border. I mean, I'm not talking about the border. I'm talking about nationwide trafficking operations.
No, I got everything you guys are talking about. I just think it's so much bigger than that. That is part of it. I think it fits this section, like with the technical knowledge, providing specialized equipment, like you said. This is sticking out to me right here.
Mm-hmm.
Participating in law enforcement activities to investigate or prevent clandestine intelligence activities by foreign powers or their agents, international terrorist activities, and international narcotics activities. So that fits that part too. But
even
the assassination attempts on Trump. Of I mean, the didn't we just arrest a guy who was
Tawhidi? Tawhidi, he's Afghani, and they arrested his brother-in-law.
What was he trying to do again?
He
plan a mass casualty event for inauguration day or election day.
He met up and attempted to purchase some AK-47s and rounds of ammo from some feds, and they sold their home and all of their belongings in order to finance his family's returning to Afghanistan. And I've scanned the indictment. It doesn't say specifically where he was targeting. It describes his target as being a large group of people on election day, but he did Google and he also visited Washington, D.C. So maybe he was planning on Washington, D.C. on election day. But one of a bunch of foreigners who have gotten in and committed crimes thanks to Joe Biden's lax immigration policies and failed Afghanistan policies. That's how this guy got into the country, was the Afghanistan debacle. But he also had a way in. It's either his son-in-law or brother-in-law, who is a minor, was a legal resident of America, of the U.S. And so that was like his tie-in to get to Oklahoma City.
And it also makes me think when we go through things like, we say the word cartel, and that has a certain connotation to Americans. But I think that what we're going to be seeing going forward, in the years ahead, when it comes to enforcement, when it comes to deportation, and most importantly, D-class, is that the cartels don't stop at what Netflix shows you in fictionalized tellings of the Sinaloa cartel, right? There's sort of this fictionalized template that we all think of cartels as, oh yeah, they're Mexican drug lords, right? They run drugs. Some of them are involved in human trafficking, etc. Well, I think that we as Americans are going to learn in the years ahead that they were also being hired by US and international politicians for anything and everything that they needed to get done. Cue the Seth Rich conspiracies, etc. Just as an example, cartel doesn't stop at Mexican drug runners. It's a word, it's a catch-all term for lawless, nationless, international mercenaries that were hired, that basically they're the deep state's army. This is what these guys are.
Criminal organizations.
Yeah.
Definitely. Anyway, okay, let's move on to our next topic here because we still have a lot more to get through. And I think we should do this? Let's do that transition story.
Okay.
We'll do transition story and then that SCOTUS thing, because those two, they're similar-ish. You know, like I think they connect, and but it's very interesting. And this story specifically reminds me of some stuff we've talked about with Devolution too. Trump holds up transition process, skirting ethics and fundraising rules. Anytime I think transition and it being weird, I think back to this story. The really quite shocking inside the ugly transition at the Pentagon, even though these aren't quite related, but this is what it makes me think of. The last time Trump was involved in a shaky transition or weird transition process, it was when he was leaving and our Pentagon was not sharing classified information with the incoming Biden team. This time around, he's, I think this is a little more savvy move, as you kind of alluded to before the show, Kyle. Less than a month before Election Day, Donald Trump's campaign has not yet participated in the government's official presidential transition process, a significant break from past practice that could threaten the seamless transfer of power should the Republican nominee win the election. What would you guys like to point out from this article, Kyle?
The gist of it is that I think it's a deep state author telling the rest of his friends that, guys, Trump didn't step into the trap that we're setting, and he's not going to step into it. The trap that they're talking about in this article, without calling it a trap, is that there's 3 documents that Trump needs to sign, basically about the transition, with the GAO and other things, and he's not doing it. He's not signing these transition-related documents. They're still negotiating 2 of them, and one of them he's flat out refusing to sign so far. He's also not sitting in for these intel briefings because he says that they're another trap. I'll go to the briefing and they'll give me some intel, and then they'll leak the intel and blame me and say that I leaked it. And he said that many times, and he's quoted in this article as that. But I think that what it's really getting at is they're kind of mad because if Trump signs these agreements, they get to put staff into his transition team, which can then spy on his transition, which is what happened in 2016. And he can't take any more private money. Once he signs up for this ethics rule stuff, he can't take any more money, and any more private money. And so he's like, no, I'm not going to like self-own. I'm not going to like handicap my income for the campaign. So he's just not going to sign it. And that's what this guy's mad about, is that Trump isn't falling for this trick, and he's willing to say, yeah, I'm going to continue taking private money. And one of the defenses Trump has is that while he took in like $2 or $4 million or something, $2 million or something, I don't remember what it was, of private money after he signed the same agreement back in 2016. Joe Biden waited to sign this agreement late too and took in 20-something million dollars in private donor money. So Trump can like use that as kind of like a narrative shield to be like, well, Biden took in 20-something million. I think I can go ahead and do that. Anyway, I think that's a lot of what's going on with this transition thing, is them broadcasting that Trump isn't going to fall for this trap. He's going to continue raising private money, and we're not going to be able to get these plants into his transition team as early as we want to. The last thing I want to say about this is that while this reminds John of the transition in 2021, it reminds me of the transition in 2017, 2016 timeframe, when Trump's first transition team was loaded with swamp creatures. You had Woolsey on there and Gal Luft and all these people who were in business, literally in swampy criminal business with Hunter Biden and working for CEFC. You had literal Russian assets and swamp creatures, Ukrainian swamp creatures. You had all sorts of swampy, corrupt people in Trump's first transition team, and he caught them all. It was a feature, not a bug. He invited the rats onto the ship and trapped them. It was great. And Trump this time is like holding that off a little while longer. And that's like the interesting change to me, is that he's not inviting all of that in at this time. And I don't think he needs to. There's an obvious low-hanging fruit here for devolution nerds that Trump doesn't actually need these intel briefings because he's already getting briefed.
I mean, and he's commented on why he wasn't going to take those. But this is also reminding me of, wasn't there some shenanigans about the transition and this specific, like the General Services Association or whatever, right after Biden won? Like it took a little bit, but then Trump finally like funded the department and allowed them to like do their thing. Didn't that take place in 2020?
He delayed the GAO packing up White House and everything, and then shipping it off. And then when he did, they packed up the documents and shipped them to Mar-a-Lago. And then we got the docs case later, and Cassidy Hutchinson was over there at GAO. And then later on, she's a plant for our side in the J6 hearings. By the way, I would bet $1 that Cassidy Hutchinson is Bob Woodward's inside secret Trump's aid source that he's using, because she's been running around DC for a while planning fake stories. But the Government Accountability Office was delayed packing Trump up, and they made a big fuss about it. But
I was referring to this. A little known Trump appointee is in charge of handing transition resources to Biden, and she isn't budging. This is from November of 2020. Trump administration appointees refusing to sign a letter allowing President-elect Joe Biden's transition team to formally begin its work this week. That's when he became the office of the president-elect or whatever. Another sign the incumbent president has not acknowledged Biden's victory and can disrupt the transfer of power. The administrator of the GSA, the low-profile agency in charge of federal buildings, has a little-known role when a new president is elected to sign paperwork, officially turning over millions of dollars, as well as give access to government officials. So, I mean, this is interesting, because this was Trump refusing to do it with Biden coming in, and now it's refusing to do it on the flip side of it with potentially him coming in.
Looks like she approved it on the 24th.
Yeah, she later approved it, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I know that obviously they're going to mention the Biden administration a million times in here because that's who the transition is between. But in light of our boy Blue and devolution in general, it's going to be interesting to watch the timing here, because it mentions several times, they're in active negotiations with the Biden team. Kamala's already signed these documents. So you also wonder if there's as much control as we sometimes think, if the Biden team's going to play along with the Trump team in terms of timing, and that they're shielding this stuff more from the deep state department. That's who Trump. There's a line in here that just stuck out to me that's obvious, but it appears to be guided, at least in part, by the candidate's deep suspicion and mistrust of the government he is running to lead. So it's like you can read that a few ways besides the Biden administration proper, keeping information from certain players within it, I think, is more the move.
And there's also, I missed
this. They changed that. They got rid of that ability or responsibility on. Can I share my screen?
Yep.
This as a response to what happened and what you were just talking about, to Trump delaying it. The ECA reform removed that to where from the GSA administrator, Emily Murphy. She doesn't have to.
Wait, so
the bill specifies when the qualified presidential and vice presidential candidates are entitled to receive federal assistance during the transition into office. Instead of her signing it off, it's just automatic.
This was the ECA that did that?
Yeah, the reform, yeah.
From that was 2021 or whatever?
Well, that was signed into law last year, I think. The one that made it more difficult to stop slates of electors and stop a president being certified, which they're now all regretting passing because Trump's going to win and they're not going to be able to stop him.
Yeah. Trying to figure out I want to find that bill because I'm curious what else they changed having to do with the transition, and if that's any reason to why Trump's not signing.
Well, in that SCOTUS article, that's the other thing in that SCOTUS article. It mentions the ECA and how they revised that statute, and it changed the safe harbor date.
Let's get into that.
It made the safe harbor date mandatory.
Why the Supreme Court might cast the final vote for president. 3 scenarios for major interventions. This is from Politico, so
I'm okay
it's
with that scenario, by the way.
hot garbage, right? The new Supreme Court term that began this week isn't overflowing with obvious blockbusters. The justices have taken one big culture war case, a challenge to Tennessee's ban on gender-affirming health care for trans youth. Got to throw the trans propaganda in there.
Speaking of transition teams.
But turned down invitations to deepen the court's assault on the administrative state. Will such modesty last? One reason to think not is this: the presidential election cycle is just getting to the point where political conflicts could mutate into constitutional cases. In fact, the Supreme Court has already shown it is unafraid to scramble electoral rules mere weeks before balloting starts. Recently accepted a Republican effort to require proof of citizenship for some Arizona ballots. Then
Isn't it amazing that they portray that as a negative thing, like such a normal thing?
Like, what is, can even the liberals, like, can they give one reason, like good reason why we can't verify that American citizens are the only ones voting in our elections? Like,
well, it's probably the same reason they put out campaign videos in 2020 trying to teach black people how to use laptops. They're racists.
We all know why.
And they don't have any actual voters. Yeah, it's absurd.
Anyway, so 3 paths already exist for the Supreme Court if it wants to reshape the 2024 outcome. The first path lies through a challenge to a state's court's ruling on state election law. And they just go through what they kind of talked about there. The second path, think Moore versus Harper, by the way. Moore versus Harper, North Carolina. A second path for the court opens after votes are cast. After a state's winner is declared, a slate of electors must then be certified by each state before the Electoral College convenes to formally anoint the next president. What happens, however, if a state fails to submit its slate to Congress in time? That one is interesting. Until recently, the answer was not much. The 1887 Electoral Count Act said that submissions by a December safe harbor date were treated as conclusive, but late submissions could still be considered. However, when Congress revised that statute in 2022 to try to prevent another instance of the fraud and chaos that took place on January 6, 2021, it amended the safe harbor deadline to make it mandatory. The statute, however, is silent as to what happens if a state blows by the must submit date. Can Congress still consider the slate, or would the state's electoral college seats be eliminated from the final tally? The new law punts this question to the courts, and it creates a fast-track mechanism for certification-related disputes to reach the justices. I think this is some signal here, guys.
I do too.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting signal. And then they give a scenario here too. Imagine then that the MAGA-backed Georgia State Election Board refuses to certify a Harris victory. Isn't that the same election board that just subpoenaed the 2020 Fulton County vote records, or the ballots? I wonder if they even have them. I'm surprised they do, if they do.
And interesting that I know Ghost has been posting a lot of stuff of Trump's previous statements of Kemp and how good of a relationship he's got with him and all that. It's kind of interesting.
It is interesting. I got more on this. Oh, wait. To be sure, state law imposes what some call a crystal clear deadline on the state certification, but the board's MAGA members could say their constitutional oaths forbid them from heeding a state law that requires them to bless what they falsely label a fraudulent result. How do they know? Falsely.
Yeah, I love that. That was an editor.
Yeah. Conflict over state law might well tie the governor's hands, opening the gate to a legal challenge under the amended Electoral Count Act, which isn't up to the states to determine this stuff anyway. Anyway, love that one. The third path to the court opens up after a joint session of Congress is convened to bless the Electoral College tally. It is the least likely to unfold, perhaps happily, because it would also be the most explosive. Under federal law, a fifth of senators and a fifth of representatives can object to a state's Electoral College certification. One ground for objection is that the votes were not regularly given. Isn't this the fifth that came with the recent update to the Electoral Count Act too? This was this threshold was raised.
It used to be one from each chamber like agreeing and now
Yep.
it's this. It has to be a fifth.
Yep.
I don't think this one is actually as the least likely of the scenarios they spell out.
Right.
They say it is, but
Kind
I
of
don't
a
think it
mirror
is.
scenario. Yeah.
I don't think it is the least likely.
Again, this legislative language isn't exactly clear, but one leading scholarly account suggests it means cast consistent with the federal constitution, federal law, and state law. Votes for someone who isn't qualified to be president would arguably fall under this category. That's the signal right there, because this is the Raskin point. Raskin wants to use January 6th to basically say Trump cannot be president. He isn't qualified. He committed an insurrection.
They're showing you their sort of game theory chart here. This is what they're looking at. They've got their scenarios. That this is their war game. And yeah, the Raskin war game is the red button option for them. They hope that they're able to just steal it the old-fashioned way in the first couple of scenarios and fend off Trump's counter attacks to that, Georgia, etc. This is the red button scenario, which I think when you mentioned signal, John, there's a lot of it here. But when the writer talks about this as an explosive scenario, to your point, Kyle, I don't see it necessarily as the least likely scenario either. But I think the signal I pull out of that, why did they call that an explosive scenario? I think it's because they know that in that scenario, the public mandate, the illusion of public mandate is fucking gone, right? I'm not claiming and I'm not claiming that they have the public mandate to successfully steal the election for Kamala. I don't think that they do, but I think that if you're looking from their perspective, what are we as the establishment and the media particularly more likely to be able to successfully defend to the American people? That Kamala did win the election, or that Trump won it, but we're also going to stop him from becoming president. They know that that's, as you said, the break glass.
Yeah.
Yep. But they say it all. Consider the possibility that Democrats wish to remind people that Trump played an active role in January 6th. They bring up Colorado trying to disqualify him. Supreme Court rejected the argument, saying only federal actors and not the states could disqualify a presidential candidate. And then they're outlining the whole thing. This is Raskin's plan. So it would end up to the Supreme Court to decide.
They took the Supreme Court tossing that stuff out, the various Supreme Courts tossing out the disqualification efforts as a challenge or instructions of like, no, you guys need to do this at the federal level. You need to subvert democracy at a federal level rather than doing it at the state level.
I think the first path they put forward here with the various state cases and lawsuits and stuff and challenges is the least likely and is basically just boilerplate. And when I first read it, I was like, oh, this article isn't that interesting. The second one, I think, with them not meeting the deadline, if the votes are, or if the state says, the vote wasn't taken regularly, there was some hindrance to the vote being taken, we're not going to send it. They went all the way to fraud. Let's say it's not fraud.
Yeah.
Let's just say that perhaps a hurricane hits a state and there was great difficulty with getting the vote collected, people voting, getting it counted, whatever. Maybe it doesn't make it, or the vote wasn't taken under regular conditions or normal conditions. And so somebody, Republican, Democrat,
protest.
I don't know, says this thing is not legit. We can't send it off just yet. We got to dot our I's and cross our T's or whatever. I could picture a scenario like that playing out either for the right reasons or the wrong reasons.
Right.
But just you could, any scenario where Trump's enemies have the opportunity to take an entire state's set of votes away, they're going to exploit that. And if you can exploit it because of natural disaster or through allegations of fraud or through allegations of the vote having been erroneously taken in the first place, they're going to try it. And I wouldn't be surprised to see, like the various liberal lawsuit organizations, NAACP, ACLU, suing a Republican state regarding the way the vote was taken due to whatever conditions were happening on the ground. So I think that scenario is actually the least like, or I think the first scenario was least likely. This one's second, kind of moderately like I could see it happening. But The last one is most likely because we've seen them foreshadow it over and over again, I think for over a year now, that they're going to try and make the case that Trump can't be president. I think they're mad at Jack Smith for not charging him with the correct statute that would have allowed them to more easily make that argument. But I think they're glad that Jack Smith filed that giant 160 something page brief last week that gave them a bunch of narrative ammo to make the case. And that brings me around to say I'm surprised that those narratives died out so quickly in our news cycle, but maybe it's the natural effect of having a hurricane in the news. Media love talking about severe weather because it's money. It's money when you talk about severe weather. So news media are always going to shift to that. So
don't you worry.
Maybe they're going to bring that back out a little bit later. I don't know.
I bet we see a supplemental filing to boost that thing once the hurricane news dies down before the election.
Well, there will be. That's been ordered. Trump's team is responding to Jack Smith's filing with, they already requested, can it be up to 180 pages, just like Jack Smith got. And then Judge Chu can order them to reply to it, and then also ordered Jack Smith to give a sir reply, and then for Trump team to give a reply. They're each going to get 2 shots or 2 bites of the apple. Perfect. Or whatever we want to say.
It's like overtime.
I do want to point something out. Back when Colorado tried to disqualify Trump from the ballot, they had this legal filing or the decision that came out. It was awesome, but there's one section of it I want to point out again. I know we talked about this back when it happened, but I think this is pretty much gives the game away of how they would rule on the House basically trying to disqualify Trump on January 6th. Okay, I'm going to start a couple sentences in. But in a presidential election, the impact of the votes cast in each state is affected by the votes cast, or in this case, the votes not allowed to be cast for the various candidates in other states. An evolving electoral map could dramatically change the behavior of voters, parties, and states across the country in different ways and at different times. The disruption would be all the more acute and could nullify the votes of millions and change the election result if Section 3 enforcement were attempted after the nation has voted. Nothing in the Constitution requires that we endure such chaos, arriving at any time or different times up to and perhaps beyond inauguration. They ain't going to put up with that bullshit if they do try it and it does get to the Supreme Court.
Agreed. Yeah, great find, John. Great find.
Thank you.
My takeaway too from the third scenario they laid out there, I think we talked about this a bit last Wednesday, but when I try to game out from a Patriot control perspective the path that this whole thing is going to take with November, and if we're looking at this as a wake-up operation, the argument I'd put forth last week is what wakes more Americans up as to the fraudulent system, political system that we're operating in. A repeat of 2020? Yes, it would be damaging to their narrative. It would wake more people up. Or the red button scenario that you guys have laid out with 14th Amendment, etc. in January. You can have both. You can have your cake and eat it too in this scenario. I'm starting to really feel, predictions are impossible in this world, but I'm really starting to feel that we're going to get tons of reporting, real reporting, of all of these attempts to steal the election in November, dialed up to 11 from 2020. It's not going to work. And then they're going to go to this red button scenario, because then you've got a repeat of 2020 in terms of them trying to steal it again through all the same means and then some. And then you've got that didn't work, so they decided to just take the mask off completely and tell the American people, okay, fine, he did win the election, but he still can't be president. And they're just gonna, it's like, if I was gaming it out and I'm looking for mass damage to the administrative state and to the deep state, that's how you do it.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna engage because I'm gonna wait until we get a little closer. I still think there's gonna be so much more that's gonna happen now, and we've gone over this so many times. My opinion's gonna change probably 15 more times before we get there. So.
That's where I am right now. I wanted to just show this quick thing. I was looking for something else, but recalling our previous topic. Look what else is being rerun here with Trump-Putin Logan Act. It's kind of funny because I think on previous shows in the last few months, we keep asking the open-ended question, why aren't they bringing up the Logan Act at all when it comes to Trump and Orban and Trump and this person and that person? And there it is. There's your Logan Act bingo card before the 2024 election.
Got it. What else we got here? We got that. Oh, did you guys see the election interference from CBS News? Editing the clip?
Oh, yeah, editing the 60 Minutes clip, yeah.
Yeah, let me play this.
Got busted good.
Yeah. And like we've talked about this so many times. Like their buzzword is like all this election interference stuff from Russians and all these things, but then it's our own media that does it so much worse, and there's more evidence of it. Let me show this.
Didn't Trump cite a specific violation too? Trump's team.
They might have.
They cited. I'll try to find it.
You try to find that. I'll play this clip because they have the actual answer that she gave and then the edited answer. And it's amazing that this came out this way. This is a perfect little clip.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We are not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
But it's,
I mean, they changed the questioner too. Like they zoom in on the guy and either he asks it the exact same way again, or I don't understand why they edited him. I understand why they edited her. I don't understand why they edited him. Did you see that?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if it was whoever made this clip did that. Like, I don't know if that was CBS or not, but like that's how they edited her answer. She gives a word salad answer at the beginning. It doesn't make any sense. Then CBS comes in and clips it, so it makes it seem like, oh, that's a reasonable answer, and it was from a completely different portion of the interview. Like that, what? That is totally misleading. That is that's election interference right there.
So, John, I've got the statement from Trump on Truth Social, which this one feels again cease and desist-y to me. I've never seen this before, but the producers of 60 Minutes sliced and diced, cut and pasted Lion Kamala's answers to questions which were virtually incoherent over and over again, some by as many as 4 times in a single sentence or thought, all in an effort, possibly illegal, as part of the news division, which must be licensed, to make her look more presidential or at least better. It may also be a major campaign finance violation. This is a stain on the reputation of 60 Minutes that is not recoverable. It will always remain with this one-story brand. I've never heard of such a thing being done in news. It's the very definition of fake news, and the public is owed a major and immediate apology. This is an open and shut case and must be investigated starting today. So, I know that this is a Trumpy statement, but you take that statement in, directly follow it from the cease and desist postings he did in September, 2 of them, and it takes on a little bit of a different tone when he's saying, yeah, this isn't recoverable, 60 Minutes. You fucked up. You just interfered in the election. So, I don't think this is just like MAGA people complaining on Twitter, look, it's fake news. The tone of Trump's statements have shifted to include more legal, constitutional language, I think, rather than just rhetoric.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it comes back down to that definition of election interference and election influence. Like the stuff that they say election interference, the actual physical tampering and all that stuff is impossible. But election influence is like what Russia's always doing in favor of Trump. Yeah. Iran, they try to, but aren't successful. China would never do such a thing. Right. But this is influencing elections. Like this is totally biased behavior from the media. And I mean, it's just stupid. Like they should be airing these interviews fully uncut. The transcript should be available. And I wasn't it Herridge, CBS Herridge, Catherine Herridge, who made a big push about releasing these transcripts back when Biden was doing interviews.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's actually come out yet.
She's been Catherine Herridge is dunking on CBS right now.
Is she? Was that who she worked for?
She's been re-releasing transcripts of her interview with Trump and then an interview with Bill Barr, and just dunking on CBS for them editing these things. Like, this is how you do it. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what she's basically like not peacocking isn't the word, but she's basically being like, look, this is what you do. This is how journalism actually functions. What you're doing is not journalism.
Is CBS saying they're not going to release it or something?
Like they haven't released the full
responded.
transcript.
Yeah, I don't think that they've responded to the controversy. They're basically radio silent. It makes me think of, I don't know if we were going to discuss the piece, but just the Newsweek thing on Harris. I thought this quote was fascinating in this context. They quote Thomas
Gift.
Your
screen?
Hold on. This just perfectly dovetails into the media's panic pattern right here. Then keep in mind, I mean, what is it? 48 hours ago, they were talking about Kamala's surging in the polls and everything's great, right? Well, Wednesday night, Kamala Harris Media Blitz is not going according to plan. And I was joking with the guys before the show. What's amazing is the experts they quote are just, I know it's overused, but we say saying the quiet part out loud. Quote, this week showed why Harris's staff was previously shielding her from doing impromptu interviews with the media. They quote Thomas Gift, some professor dude, politics guy. To put it charitably, answering adversarial questions on the fly isn't her strong suit. Republicans and even some journalists.
That's the quality I would love in a president.
Yeah, we're piling on Harris for previously not doing any sit-down interviews. Right now, her inner circle is likely wishing Harris had continued to take the heat for that, rather than facing the wave of criticism that hits this week. Keep in mind, this is talking about the 60 Minutes interview, not including election interference and edited questions. This is talking about the edited interview was a catastrophe for Kamala Harris. So, and again, the reason I say quiet part out loud, to your point, John, it's so simple and reductive for us. But the media is now telling their own viewers and readers, listen, Kamala is not qualified to be the president, which is why she can't be in front of cameras. We just need Trump to not be in there. And their sell these days almost feels like they did this with our boy Blue back in the summer before they old Yellered him. Their sell now to the American people is, don't worry about it. We all know, even though we're not allowed to say, she's not really going to be the president. The president is going to be all of us. The media, the machine, the State Department, the deep state, right? Remember Obama 2.0, Obama 3.0? Like, they're now saying the Trump, Obama in the basement stuff as their sell to their voters. It's pretty amazing.
It's a great point, but the fascinating thing to me is the difference here between how they're trying to get Kamala out there and what Trump is doing. Like, Trump is going on these hours-long podcast interviews with like go and sit on the couch chatting with these people for hours on end, just talking about his weaves and all that stuff, which was, love that. Did you guys see that?
Man. Oh yeah, that was Jimmy's so wrestling. He's talking about his asides, his bobbing and weaving, and his all that shit.
But my point is, like, it's that versus Kamala, who's going on The View, Stephen Colbert, and then like getting edited interviews from CBS and stuff. And those are like her three big ones. Has she done anything else?
She did the one that I was not aware of this. Yeah, that's the one. And I was reading Politico this morning, and they were tearing that choice apart because they were talking about the obvious tone-deaf nature of her going on this like sex strong women's podcast while the nation is on the verge of all these catastrophes. And the day before, by the way, did you guys see that CNN reprimanded her for reprimanding Ron DeSantis because they were talking about how tone deaf that was, that she's going on sex podcasts while DeSantis is coordinating a disaster response.
Well, and this comes to the Biden stuff. So Kamala says that Kamala said that DeSantis wasn't taking her call or something.
Yes, because he was talking to Biden,
throwing shade. But DeSantis was talking to Biden, and Biden praised DeSantis for his work.
Yeah.
And twice now, Biden has come out with a press conference when Kamala was giving a press conference and totally taking the spotlight away from her and contradicting her and throwing her under the bus by saying she's been involved in every aspect of my presidency. She's been there for all the big decisions. My presidency is her presidency. So they can't distance from him. Do you want to pull up that article too, BB?
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like...
This is the Our Boy Blue, as Kyle said earlier today. This is as Our Boy Blue as it gets. And now the media is picking up on it. If you want to share my screen here.
Oh my gosh, she's going on Howard Stern too?
She already did, I think, unless that hasn't aired yet. But I think it did.
Oh my
gosh.
Thanks, Joe. Is Biden's farewell tour helping Donald Trump? So the gist of this one, you think there's some subversive or specific thing they're talking about. Their argument, the media's argument as to how Our Boy Blue is damaging Kamala Harris is that he's going in public and praising the work Kamala Harris did during his administration. And their Politico wrote a similar piece to this where they basically repeated the J.D. Vance. Like, my favorite moment from the Vance Waltz thing was when Vance kind of extended a backhanded olive branch and said, he was like, I don't envy the position you're in, Tim. You've got to defend Kamala Harris while condemning the current administration that she's in. And now the media is saying the worst possible thing to do is to tie Kamala Harris to the Biden administration. And Joe Biden's coming out here and being like, man, I couldn't have done any of this without Kamala Harris. And then a Trump campaign official told Newsweek, it's good, quote, more Biden is good for us. So here it is. Trump campaign said, quote, Biden wanted to make it crystal clear that Kamala is tethered to every single one of his failures, and it worked. Thanks, Joe. Biden upstages Kamala and ties her to their disastrous record.
It's now, I don't know. I feel like it's more irrational to make the argument that Biden is one of theirs. Like, it's way more rational to just go ahead and make the case that he's one of ours.
But it's also, he could be like super pissed off, him and his entire family, of what they did to him, and this is their way of being like,
that's true.
Fuck you guys. I mean,
enemy of my enemy.
Yep. It's interesting stuff.
There is a quote. I do have a short clip from that press conference, that one of Biden's unaired press conferences. This came to me from 2 unnamed sources close to the situation.
Well, I'm sure this is going to be fantastic.
Spanish! Do you trust that we provided you with enough slack so that your block will land safely on the lawn?
Sir, yes, sir.
And Blue!
Yes, sir.
Do you trust that I do not want to see you die here tonight?
Sir, yes, sir.
Blue, you're my boy!
Thank you, sir.
You didn't get the part where they throw the bricks off and goes through the sewer pipe?
No, that is Trump talking to Biden. It started as a joke, but he has become my most favoritist fake president of all time. And we've had a lot of fake presidents.
Have you guys seen this out of the New Yorker or the New York Magazine?
Before you go, I just want to point out Trump's latest truth that he put on right before we went live tonight, where he's talking about another debate with Kamala.
Pull it up and read it, bro.
Okay, hold on, I'll grab it.
A dull slog. It's amazing.
Kamala's come down. How the Harris campaign became a grim slog.
Wow. Jesus. I mean, man. We've been saying for months, everybody in this community, going all the way back to the drops, why is Hillary floating out there? Oh, by the way, 2 days ago, I think it was in Monday's brief, Ash was writing about the rumors in the media is that the Obama campaign is going to start coming out, or the Obama campaign. Obama is going to start coming out and campaigning ostensibly for Kamala, but man, are they trying to force another swerve?
The way they write this article is fascinating. Like it makes it seem like this is what Trump wanted. It's a stark reversal from those early days when it felt like Democrats were finally, as AOC jokingly put it, in disconcerting levels of array. Donald Trump was spiraling, his panicked indignation seemingly confirming that replacing the 81-year-old Biden was a blow from which the Republicans might not recover. Now, as we enter the homestretch, Harris's shocking and historic candidacy has become oddly, perhaps even perilously, normal. Beltway pundits will tell you that in a country as polarized as the U.S., the race was always going to tighten into a photo finish, but it's impossible to escape the conclusion that the Harris campaign has betrayed its original promise of unbridled possibility, the consequences of which will reverberate beyond November 5th, regardless of who wins. Fascinating.
Derek McGurkin, shout out. Black Hawk Tua down.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah, they're, again, we talked about earlier in the show, like signal flares, deep state archipelago. This feels like a repeat. The media cycle this week feels like a repeat of late July when we were talking about, man, they seem to be telling the establishment to get Joe out of there. And they were hedging back and forth. And then the media, they almost fought this little media battle. And then the main signal setters in the media put out their big op-eds saying like, Joe's done a good job, but it's time. They all got on brand, right? It kind of feels like over the last few days, there's all these media pieces coming out and going, she's doing her best, but guys, I don't know. And they're waiting for somebody to give them the signal. Like, they seem to be saying, is this really what we're going to November 5th with? Is there not another option here?
I got to read more of this because this is fascinating stuff. And sorry, I'm just like discovering this in live time here. But in response to Republican smears about her being the border czar, Harris has pivoted rightward on the issue, promising a more restricted path for asylum seekers. There's another one here. Harris's deference to the status quo has been even more pronounced on foreign policy, which has been dominated by Israel's grinding war in Gaza. People on the left, and particularly young people on the left, harbored hopes that she would break with American dogma of supplying limitless support to Israel. Those hopes have been dashed. She paid lip service for a need for a ceasefire and all this stuff. Harris's timid approach is clearly a correction of her failed 2020 presidential campaign. Sorry, alienating all those people. Gone today is that desire to broaden the horizon of political possibility, less unburdened by what has been, to borrow another of the vice president's mantras and stubbornly chained to it. But this is stuff we've been talking about for a while. Like they're in these no-win situations where you're going to lose part of your base if you try to get the moderates, and the moderates are going to want to come to Trump on all those key issues because he's the guy for it.
Yeah,
fascinating.
Kyle, what was that? What was that post? Did you find it?
It's and this is a peak Trump post. This is peak Trump, the whole thing. But there's an aside in here where he's saying, I'm not going to do another debate with Kamala, and here's why I'm winning, whatever. But this aside that I have highlighted, he says, besides, Kamala stated clearly yesterday that she would not do anything different than Joe Biden. So there is nothing to debate. So that's like, okay, that ties into what we were just talking about, and it's funny. But I think it's also a bid from Trump saying, distinguish yourself, go ahead. Like he's opening, it's an opening right there. He's saying, go ahead, define yourself as different than Joe Biden. See if you can. And he's like opening that door for her to try to do that, which then just opens the door for Biden to counteract her again and be like, yeah, that's what we did in my administration or however. But I like it because Trump shuts down the idea of another debate, which I'm still not convinced there won't be one. It seems more likely there won't be one, but Trump is a showman. So the best way to build up another big show is to say it's not going to happen. No, like protest a little bit and say, okay, and then give in to the conditions that you really, really want. So, but I like this because I think that line is bait. I think it's bait to Kamala and her team. Define yourself as something other than Joe Biden 2.0, and we'll see. And then we'll see how you do if I'm interested in a debate against you. I don't think it makes a difference, but I think it invites them to continue down this path of trying to distinguish themselves and define themselves. And they keep continuously failing at it because Kamala is vapid anyway.
Well, John, you just posted that CNN one. I can show that too. If you want to share my screen on that exact point, this was what the media industrial complex was sending the flares out this week about Harris. One of the major things, she was on The View. That was another one of her stops this week, and they asked her to distinguish herself from the Biden administration. You know, what are you going to do differently? What would you do differently than Joe Biden? And she said, not a thing. So then they're trying to do this, as John just sent over. Harris weighs more breaks with Biden as he keeps injecting himself into the campaign. So this is both, actually. This headline is like a full convergence of all of the different headlines that we've been looking at. It's Kamala needs to distinguish herself from Joe. Kamala's not distinguishing herself from Joe, and Joe is making sure she can't distinguish herself from him.
It's amazing stuff, man. These last few weeks are going to be crazy. Besides the hurricane and weather-related stuff, I anticipate a few October surprises, like multiple of them. And there's been some hints at what some might be, but I can't wait to see what they are. If it's going to be Hillary, what Hillary said about the video that's going to be coming out of Kamala and maybe some Diddy parties. It's going to be some foreign aspect to it. Like, who knows? It's going to be crazy. I can't wait. But we should probably get to the boosts and the rants. I don't know if did we get all the topics we wanted to?
The only other thing that maybe just a passing mention here is antitrust cases going on. Feels tangentially Devo-y to me. Executive Order 13818 is one I was posting about earlier today. That's always kind of been my favorite one, just in terms of the path forward into an American future divorced from the oligarchy. For anybody who missed it, the DOJ's cases against Apple, Amazon, and Google are progressing, and the one against Google in particular, as Kyle mentioned before the show, there's two against Google, one about their ad market, and the other one that this was about their search market, their monopoly on search, essentially, and unfair business practices. That one is going so badly for Google that the DOJ is now the judge is now floating the idea of breaking the company up. As far as what I saw, the last time that happened in the US to a company even approaching this scale, first of all, it's never happened to one this big, but the closest analog is AT&T. And I believe that was in the early 90s that they broke that up because of the same sort of situation. So we've got the three mega caps of the United States all being hunted by our boy Blue's Department of Justice and systematically ripped to shreds in front of our eyes while Donald Trump is off the stage. So I don't know.
Yeah, the Google stuff is interesting. The censorship generally is interesting to me. With the, we work pretty closely with Rumble, and we obviously last week we spent some time talking about your guys' being upset about the ads and the ad market stuff. This is kind of what they're competing against, the Google and their ad market, and then the search algorithms and all that stuff, and how they've. I mean, if they actually force them to sell it off and break up and not allow people to use these kind of tactics in the future, like this kind of levels the playing field, which is something that we've been wanting for a while now. And this is just with like the internet search of things and the advertising. Wait till they get to YouTube. I bet YouTube is going to get a lawsuit very similar to this, if it hasn't already.
Well,
Google,
it's easy to
Google
forget,
owns
right?
YouTube.
Google is YouTube. Yeah, Google is YouTube. So
This will change YouTube.
Yeah, so exactly, John. I mean, that's one of those major things, and that's where, I mean, we certainly talk about the ad stuff at Rumble, and we talk about being suppressed and everything behind the scenes all the time, because it's been our waking life for the last couple of years, and we're you can't help but compare yourself to what could we be doing, who could we be reaching if we were on a bigger platform. But the thing that besides the fact that Rumble has stood by everybody and is not engaging in censorship, which is why we support them and they support us, the really optimistic kind of viewpoint I have for them and the excuse I give to them when they're trying to roll these things out, they are not fighting on a fair battlefield. Rumble has not been competing on a fair battlefield, and they are part of these antitrust cases. Rumble is part of a class action lawsuit against YouTube, which is Google. It's the same type of thing. In my other jobs, I've sort of been privy to how these things work in terms of, when you go to the Hollywood Reporter, whatever it is, pick your website, ESPN.com, the ads you're seeing there are not being served to you by that website, right? ESPN is not usually deciding what you're seeing in terms of advertising. They basically plug their code in and sell space to an ad network. What the DOJ is saying is that those ad networks, Google has a monopoly. So even though Disney and the Fortune 500 is buying ad space on all these different websites, if you're Rumble, Google is the gatekeeper that's deciding whether or not your ads are going to be able to be served to all these companies. So they're this massive gatekeeper that is keeping the gate, right? So if Rumble, if this DOJ antitrust suit it has the potential of setting precedents that are going to immediately impact things like X's and Elon Musk's lawsuits against them and Rumble's lawsuits against YouTube of saying, hey, we don't need to break YouTube up necessarily. You need to let us into the party. You need to let Rumble into these same ad networks so that we can be in a free market and we can see if these companies actually do or don't want to advertise. One more point on that, because I know that people don't know this a lot of the times with what's going on with Rumble advertising. This is a two-way street. It's actually less about Rumble having access to these networks. It's more about advertisers that want to advertise on Rumble are not doing so because they are being threatened by Google that if these big brands advertise with Rumble, they will be cut off from the rest of the internet because of these Google ad networks. So as the judge pointed out in this case, they are literally acting as an advertising cartel in the American online landscape. So sorry for the ramble, but it's like Rumble's fighting a big uphill battle, which is why we try to cut them some slack on the advertising front.
So we're fighting that battle too. Totally get it. All right. Couple things. Number one is, have you got your Myrtle Beach tickets yet? We have about 30 left, maybe less by now.
Less now. Yeah.
Yes. And so I had previously stated that there may be single day tickets available for this. I recant that. Not sure if that's going to be the case. We are on pace to sell out. So if you haven't, I would get your tickets ASAP as possible and join us in Myrtle Beach. You guys missed my Office reference. I thought one of you would call me out. ASAP as possible.
Mrs. Bright is the Office reference. You've been coordinating with her too much on these events.
Yeah.
Thinking only in Office terms. She made me watch the How I Met Your Mother episode tonight where Barney, you like that show too?
I like that show too, yeah.
Where Barney was completely beside himself that Ralph Macchio was at his bachelor party rather than the real Karate Kid, William Zabka.
Yeah, he likes the other guy. It's just I like that kind of humor. It's just funny to me. But anyway, join us in Myrtle Beach, guys. It's going to be great, and soon we'll be putting our other dates up here for upcoming events.
It's a week after the election, right? So week or two, like a week and a half, so we can help count the votes because I'm sure they'll still be being counted.
Yep.
If anybody needs us.
No, it's going to be awesome. Whatever happens on November 5th, we may not know the winner by then, but we're going to have some fun, or we're going to console each other.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, it's going to be great to be together. So join us. And then also, I'll save that one. Let's do a couple of boosts real quick. B. Gerbs, Bonnie says, thank you for Power Hours. I look forward to both each week. How does one become a monthly supporter? Is it only on locals? Thanks. See you at GART in November. There's multiple ways you can do locals. You can become a Rumble subscriber, or you can do our Substack, or you can just remember every month to give a boost to Badlands generally. I don't know if we have the option to do it recurring monthly, but am I missing anything, guys?
No, if you guys aren't subscribed to the Substack, we always forget to talk about it, but it's free. 5 days a week, put out a Badlands news brief. Ash and Ghost and myself are in there all the time. And then usually 2 or 3 a week, we do special features. Eric Carlson, Joe Lang. Awesome. A lot of Joe Lang. The Joe Lang pieces have been great lately, going down. Yeah. A lot of stuff that you Q followers will really like if you're not aware of Lang's writing, where he's really doing deep dives into how a lot of the storylines right now converge with a lot of those early Q digs.
Yeah, we rely on your guys' support, guys. So don't be afraid to subscribe somewhere, if you or all of them if you haven't yet. We always appreciate that. We got Lionheart7777 says, "Hey guys, $50 too. Thank you. Hi, hey guys. Honestly, you think Kamala is aware of what is going on, or is she a clueless puppet who thinks her candidacy is real? I tend to believe no one can be this stupid. This must be deliberate form of awakening. God bless, guys. AOG."
I think she's more clueless than Joe Biden.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, man, if she's acting that cringe, it's incredibly impressive. which is why I think
that's
it's
her.
authentic. I think that that's really her. Which is why compartmentalization goes many ways. You can still think we're watching a movie, and that many of the actors on stage do not know that they are in a movie. I kind of think that's what's going on here. A lot of people have been cast in a movie, which fits with the sort of toddler in the playpen framing as well, right? Like, these people are kind of in a movie, they're just not writing the script. They're allowed to improv, though.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's something to think about. I think she is, I would say like she's stupider than Joe Biden, but she's more cognitively aware of what is happening than
Her
Joe Biden.
surroundings. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so I don't know.
But is she more cosmically aware than our boy Blue? He is partially
He's more
in
aware
the
of
nether realm.
He's more aware of Devo and Patriot stuff than she is.
He's also got.
I don't think she's aware that her campaign is doomed.
I don't know.
Joe
I don't think
Biden
she's
is
aware
half in our
that
world and
are in
half.
control.
These
That's the
next
thing.
few weeks are going to be.
How about this? This is a difference you can see in them. Joe Biden is aware that patriots are actually in control.
Why do you think
And
that?
he's not.
Why do you think
Because
Biden's
that's
aware of it?
Because that's why Biden does the things he does.
But he also can just hate them for what they did to him. If the
Well, even if I take that
Well,
framing though, John,
Sure.
he would be
Sure.
aware that they stopped him from doing a lot of things
Yeah.
during his administration.
Maybe, but I'm saying
so
like
that
Nancy Pelosi and all those people screwed him over to get Kamala in there. He could just be doing this to spite them and not have any.
I think that's true too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's why our boy Blue joined us.
Yeah.
Originally.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. But it's the
never
arrangement
doubt
of
a
him being
Biden
out.
scorned.
The arrangement of him being on the sidelines but still interfering with her, is it more advantageous to Trump than him staying in? So even then, them taking him out, which he could definitely take offense to, positions him in a better place to help Trump than he was otherwise in.
Yeah, I mean the interesting thing with all of this is they're all puppet candidates, right? Like Joe Biden's the face of the administrative state who's actually running things, just like Kamala Harris is. And I think they knew they stole the election in 2020. They were doing everything they could to make sure that Trump wouldn't stop Biden from being inaugurated. They thought he was going to do something. He didn't. They were surprised he walked away. Maybe initially they're like, okay, we're good. We made it past that. He's not going to do anything. And then they started to realize some things like, holy shit, maybe Trump has a little more control of some things going on behind the scenes than we originally thought. Maybe he did something like a continuity government plan, whatever. Maybe they know, maybe they don't. But I think it's pretty telling that they are so afraid of him, but they're not like willing to disclose what they know actually happened, because disclosing that Trump actually has some sort of power discloses why he has that some sort of power, which discloses they ultimately stole the election. And so they can never do that. So they're like fighting this narrative warfare on for the public after everything that's already gone down behind the scenes, but they won't acknowledge what's going on behind the scenes. They can't. It's a fascinating thing going on.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
I love it. It's fun to observe.
Is that all? I think that's all of them.
No, I think there was one from the 7th, the People's Karen I had pulled up. So that was between shows. $25. I have Badlands playing in the background all day long while working to pay $99. $99 per year to support Rumble was a no-brainer. $8 per month, 58 cents per day. People, I'm sure you give the cabal more than that on the daily. Stop complaining.
Yeah, we gotta talk to Rumble and see if we can get a cut of that too.
I know.
So I don't think we get a cut of the premium to stop the ads. Anyway, let's do the rants. Black Hat Destroyer, Just Human Burning Bread. I've been watching the beginnings of Defected, and y'all started off talking about Trump and Elon being Batman and Iron Man, respectively. Interesting how it's coming full circle.
We did, and they had their I Am Iron Man moment together on stage.
Yeah. It's kind of funny to see Elon Musk jumping up and down in what looked like a crop top.
Full autismo. Yeah.
James Klain, listening to mainstream news, they keep saying Kamala's going to win. That is so scary. Trump is doing the rally in California. What is all that about? If California is liberal, he isn't going to win California, so why would he?
Same as the Colorado thing. I think it's about signal boosting the disaster that these states have become, whether or not he's going to win them in an election.
Yeah. And he's probably, boosting local candidates as well.
And he's probably got some donors down there.
True.
Northstar 07, please explain, if you know, What would keep the swamp rats from destroying documents they don't want declassified public? Who protects the documents from destruction? Trump probably already's got all the ones that he doesn't want to come out.
That's why they were so mad about his boxes of documents he was flushing down the toilet.
Remember the binder that nobody knows where it went? They had that whole CNN article. Trump misplaced the binder. Dirk McGurkin, deep throat is Bob Woodward when he's in front of a mirror. Love it, Dirk. Nice. February 18. Thank you for all your hard work, gentlemen. Thank you. Red Pilled American 21 found it. BB downtown Tampa today at 7:12. Photo courtesy of MSDNC.
I've got it.
I'll share your screen.
I think I've got that one pulled up. I think it was this one. It's not a.
Totally real.
Those are not bull sharks, by the way. Those are great whites. So nice try, but
it's definitely not
can't fool me.
An AI. There's another one for BB, close but not a shark. This is from Makes Sense to Me Too. Did you see that one?
That one is, yes, I've got that one as well. It's a killer whale in the street. It is, as you can see, it's on the internet. It's on Twitter, all verified, all independently verified.
It's Free Willy.
Yep, impossible to fake that. So, pretty crazy down there.
Dirk McGurkin. John, it's not counterintuitive if they want them to try and steal the election. That was my point, Dirk. Thank you. Dot Kenny, thank DPH for helping us through the last 2 years. Thank you for being here for the last 2 years. Red Pilled American 21. Satellite map. Space shows all 7,000 Starlink sats. Some companies over the globe with 50 sats. No way this is for InterNet. Space Force X is tracking and hacking op of deep state and illegals. Could be part of it.
Well, it's, yeah.
Never know. Tattoo Teacher, I had the storm last night, played a clip from a COVID briefing about military forces fighting drug cartels in the Caribbean. Timestamp 14450. Thanks for all you do. Yeah, I saw it. That was from April 1st, I believe, as well.
Yeah, the Millie stuff.
Millie Bar.
Yeah.
Vesper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, all their language during those COVID press conferences, invisible enemy, you will not penetrate the United States. Like,
Yep. Doesn't make sense they would penetrate the United States in the middle of travel bans in a pandemic, right? I don't know.
It does if they were releasing something.
Yeah.
If there were sabotage teams releasing things.
Yeah, I was just being sarcastic. Jay Gonzalez, 1123, surviving Milton on the... What?
Got to work on your sarcasm. Dirk didn't understand it, and then
I know.
we didn't even understand
I feel like I'm overly sarcastic sometimes, but... Jay Gonzalez, 1123, surviving Milton on the west coast of Florida. I'll be watching on replay tomorrow morning. Keep up the good work, guys. Have a good night and say a prayer for those less fortunate than myself.
Yes.
We'll do so.
Hope everybody's okay. If not, we will be looking for co-hosts for Abs, for Eye of the Storm.
And Baseless.
ASAP.
As possible. 1027.
He was, Stormy, I want you to know, if you could possibly be watching this right now, that Abs was already looking for somebody as a backup. So I don't know if I don't know if he's told you that.
You have little faith. But it's honestly, if we're being honest, Stormy Joe's in the middle of a hurricane, and it's probably going to be Abs whose internet goes out.
Yes, it will be. Yeah. If there's one thing you guys should know about Abs, it's that his internet, just
not the greatest. Sorry, I was just kidding. 1027 JS. Northwestern North Dakota has prairie fires that have burned thousands of acres of grasslands. The farmers will have no feed for their cattle this winter. Natural fires, not sure. Yeah, those have been crazy, Joe. North Dakota, thank you for that. Actually, my cousin lives in outside of one of the areas. He had to actually evacuate over the weekend, Ray, North Dakota, small town, crazy stuff. Wide Awake Patriot 146, awesome show. Looking forward to Myrtle Beach. Fascinated that the mainstream media is trying to convince us Harris is up. Where we go one, we go.
But they do have like a schizophrenia going on, right? Because they're you'll see you go to one MSM source and neck, Harris is leading, blah blah blah, and then the Harris campaign is going horribly, guys. We need to talk. Right. Well, which is it?
All right. Bipolar a little bit.
By the way, I saw some language today in some of those articles. Even though this seems surface level, it struck me with the way we see things. They kept saying insiders are having flashbacks to 2016. And I took that to mean, they never thought she would lose type of thing, because they were responding to people going, well, why are you guys so freaked out if you said this was going to be a close race anyway? Mm-hmm. And they're saying, well, in 2016, we thought that it was going to go a certain way and it didn't.
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm honestly fascinated just to see how they handle this, how both sides handle this and how it plays out as we get closer, to see how the media reflects it, how the polls reflect it, and how it differs from the betting markets. Like, that's what's going to be interesting. As the polls show one thing and the betting markets show the opposite, what is that going to mean?
That's exactly what I'm looking at right now is the betting market, because I looked at it like a week and a half ago, and 2 states have gone toss up since the last time I looked at it. And I know it's just the betting market, but the betting market has an influence on the entire thing. And so, like, I feel like if the betting markets are like really strong Trump, that trickles down into enthusiasm for Trump and discouragement for Harris voters, right? So it's like the poly market, while it's not a poll, it's a good narrative weapon for our side. Well, for whichever side someone's leading it, it's a good narrative weapon, just like polls are.
Yeah, it's what people think is going to happen and what they're willing to put money on.
Yeah.
It's more honest.
So it's useful.
And if you want anybody on your side when it comes to exposing fraud, it's professional gamblers who stand to lose a lot of money if there is fraud.
It's very true.
And Quinnipiac today has Trump winning Michigan by 4 points, with him winning Wisconsin by 2 points. And the significance of that is that's a 4-point swing in about a week.
Yeah. Think of the damages too. Like, if you steal an election and there's money on the line, people lose money over it, and it ends up coming out that you stole it. You get your ass sued, and they get like the damages from that could be crazy. But it also incentivizes people to bet on an election and try to help steal it. It goes both ways so that you win your bets. Anyway, where are we at? E.H. Kyle, have you heard of co-op or COOP, they call it? It's similar to COG and stand for continuity of operations. Chief Sims mentioned it.
Cliff. It's Cliff.
Okay. That's what I thought. Trump's White House communication director, and then D.I. Ratcliffe, deputy director of National Intel Strategy Comms. Yes, we've talked about COOP COG quite a bit. Kash Patel mentions it like that. It's very, very closely related to continuity of government. And yeah, they go hand in hand. COOP COG. Katie Hayes. It's so cool that Badlands' birthday is my birthday too. Happy anniversary, guys. Don't know how lost I'd be without you. Love this community. Well, happy birthday, Katie.
Happy birthday.
Kind of copying us a little bit, but it's fine.
Yeah. We copied her. She was probably born first. Robert L., what do you guys make of the $4 billion, according to FEMA, that was spent on COVID-19 aid in September of 2024, the most of any month since October 2023? Where did it go? Money laundering, strings cut.
Illegals.
I did see that. Talked about it on Monday. What'd you say?
It went to illegals. It went to immigration.
Crazy shit. Who knows?
I don't know that for sure, but I know a ton of FEMA money has been going to handle immigration issues. And then now that these 2 hurricanes have hit, they're saying they're broke.
And that is a major normie storyline that has major legs. I've mentioned on Defected that I was at a family cookout on Saturday. Union Dems type of guys. And one of my cousins was bringing that up and ranting and raving about all the money to Ukraine and FEMA. And there wasn't a note of disagreement.
It's crazy. I got a message from on Twitter on yesterday. Maybe it was Monday. Yeah, it was yesterday, from longtime Badlander, people who's been to Myrtle Beach. And she's like, Monday's basis conspiracies you guys did about the hurricane was like the first time my daughter, 35-year-old, has ever watched your Badlands stuff. And she's like obsessed with you guys now. But then we were like talking about this, and she said the hurricanes have woken up more people than like anything that she's seen over the last couple of years. These are people that are heavily like in tune to the politics. And it's interesting, guys.
Yeah. So Mrs. Bright, to that point, John, Mrs. Bright today were on a drive, and she was talking about she has to deal with a lot of like lunatic far lefties in her business involvement and committees and things like that. And she was talking about a text group with some of them, and a couple of the guys in there are like MAGA based and everything. And they didn't know I did this stuff apparently. But she was like, "Oh yeah, you should check out like my husband's podcast." They're like, "Oh, does he talk about like any of this stuff?" She's like, "Yeah, that's his whole thing. He goes way further than you would ever imagine." But they were talking about the hurricanes, and it's interesting because whatever your thoughts are on weather manipulation or government response to the natural disasters, the input and the output are being are both the major narratives in the zeitgeist right now, right? The American people are either going all the way down weather manipulation, natural disaster rabbit holes, or they're like, that's totally fucking crazy. But where is the government response to this? Yep. Where is the money, right? So they're completely screwed on either side of this whole situation.
It is, yeah. And yeah, we covered this all the talk around it on Basis Conspiracies Monday. It was a pretty interesting one. So for those just waking up, I'd encourage you to go watch that and then make them watch the Power Hours, guys. Lots of info here.
Clockwork Orange, then.
Yeah. Dirk McGurkin. After Hollywood is decimated and we create a new award show for movies, they should name the statue after Biden or the actor who's playing him right now.
I'm in favor of that. Our boy Blue.
Wide Awake
Best
Patriot
supporting fake president.
Wide Awake Patriot 146. Hey Kyle, what are your thoughts about what Durham will still present? When do you anticipate this to be done?
I think Durham's just going to watch Red Sox baseball for like enjoy his grandkids. I think he's done.
He handed his homework in.
Yeah. So what we're looking for is the classified annex and what's in that. And I don't think we're going to see what's in it until the criminal cases it relates to are unsealed. So I guess the sign off from Durham, the last sign you'll see from Durham is going to be maybe an indictment of Jaffe or Mark Elias or Steele or I don't know who. McCabe. The Georgia Tech researchers were referred in the Durham report. So there's definitely Jaffe and the Georgia Tech researchers are 100% possibilities for indictments because they were referred. But yeah, that's about it. I think everything else has been handed off and deferred to other prosecutors.
He might be looking to get back in the game if being a Red Sox fan is not exciting right now. So
yeah, playoffs are going on though right now, aren't they?
Not for us.
It's October.
Well, just generally baseball, not for the Twins either. The Twins were like a month ago, they were like 3 or 4 games up in the wild card. They're going to be fine. They're going to be there. And then all of a sudden, nope, they're gone.
It's a very Twins move.
Very, very Twins move. But at least we didn't get knocked out by.
You know what else is a Twins move? Is giving us David Ortiz for like some spare parts 20 years ago.
Yeah, that was not our best trade. Who wants to win World Series anyways? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Don't need that on your ego.
Yeah, I mean it's getting rough in Boston. It's been what is it? 5 months since our last championship.
What'd you guys win 5 months ago?
NBA Finals.
Oh, NBA's a joke, dude.
I know, but I'll take it to gloat. Doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, that's fair. I can't gloat. I can't do that. So, well, actually, I think Minnesota, didn't they win the WNBA at some point? Recent years?
Women's sports, John.
Hey. If it's about the gloating, it shouldn't matter. If it's about the gloating, it shouldn't matter. Wide Awake Patriot, or I just read that one. Robert L., what are your thoughts on Beau Biden overseeing the DuPont Air sex case? Signals are pointing towards Beau fighting pedophilia and considering the Biden family history. What do you make of it? I actually have no thoughts on that. So.
I've dabbled in those rabbit holes, and they're kind of interesting, but I don't know a lot about it, to be honest.
My current opinion is that the Bidens were swamp and stopped being swamp right before Biden ran for president. But I am completely open to the idea that the Biden family was never swamp and have been assets the entire time, including Joe, including Hunter, and including Beau. And part of the reason I'm open to that is because the entire Biden crime family narrative is a mirror to the Trump crime family narrative. It's like an exact copy, but you change the names and characters and places. So I can totally believe, and if that's true, it would absolutely explain what we've just experienced with both of them having been in office back to back, and the swamp draining stuff continuing, COG, Devo, all this stuff going on, and them draining the swamp together. So, I am not at all opposed to the idea that Trump's true Robin is Joe Biden. I mean, his name is Robin. His middle name is Robin. So
Really?
how perfect would that be?
Oh yeah, I forgot.
His middle name is Robin. It literally is.
That's funny.
So I'm 100% open to that, but I'm not on that boat. I'm on the boat that they were swamp and have been flipped.
Yeah. I'm not willing to go down either of those or get on board with either of those quite yet, but
Not gonna go full boy blue.
not to the point where he's a white hat. But
I will.
I know
I
you
will
will.
run full boy. Yeah.
Rick I63. Is it possible that EO 13848 has been renewed with the intention of being used against President Trump, or is there a safety valve in place where that cannot happen? It's a good question. I believe 13848 is a lot to do with those assessments. It doesn't actually do anything related to stopping any form of election interference. It's those assessments that come with it, and it defines what election interference is, which is important, and the sanctions that come from it. I don't think they're going to use it against Trump, other than those assessments are being used for narrative fodder for the left about Russia interference. Anyway,
Can you guys name all 4 fictional character names for all 4 Robins? And did you know there were 4 Robins?
I know, and I don't care.
None of them are named Robin, by the way.
No.
I'll get back to you on that.
All right.
Dragonfly Sister, love the show. Just for fun, BB and Kyle, adding John. Reminder of what I sent on Defected, that you can't hum while holding your nose. Did you try it? From Interesting Facts, I can't do it.
Will not be trying that. Not trying that. We really appreciate the support, but you're not going to get us.
I'm not going to do it live on there. I'm not going to do it. I don't know what'll happen.
I'm not going to do it either.
Just kills us
So I'm just gonna
instantly.
have an
I'm worried it'll damage my hearing.
Yeah.
I'm worried like if you, I don't know, like it makes my ears hurt thinking about it. I don't want to do it.
It's like equalizing for scuba diving, which I can't do because I had
That's
station
what
tubes in my ears.
Yeah,
when I
that's
was
what I
little
kind of
kid.
thought of, and I was like, man, if I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway, thank you for the rant, Dragonfly Sister. Someone for ODA. It's a link for the Babylon Bee that says Democrats cruelly make fun of an autistic African American jumping for joy. That's Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, that's great. He is African American.
EH Kyle says, John, which devil was Coopin? I want to understand the difference between it and COG. I don't recall hearing it before. Thanks. I believe it's mentioned in part 3 for sure.
It's because you guys are following the wrong Patel on True Social. You should be following Cash Patel.
I'd start with part 3.
Cog and Coop are peanut butter and jelly, though. So, like, anytime we mention Cog, we're talking about Cog and Coop, but we talk about Cog for shorthand because we're almost always literally referencing Trump being the head of government. So we're always talking about the Cog side of the sandwich, which is the continuity of the government apparatus.
Yeah.
We don't often talk about the continuity of the operations side, which is the other side of the sandwich, but you don't ever have one without the other. They go hand in hand. So
it's mentioned in part 13 as well. 313 for sure. I'd go in there if you want to do further research.
But
or you can
Cash
tune into
doesn't
my
make...
my recap series as well. I have a whole recap series out there where I go through a lot of the stuff. So
Cash doesn't make peanut butter and jelly. He makes jelly and peanut butter. That's what he really wants to get across in all of his interviews.
You know, what you really should do is peanut butter preserves, not jelly, preserves or jam. It has to be like real fruit, but then also natural but like really good high quality butter. Like you need the butter with the jelly or the preserves.
Jif, ultra processed, sugar added Jif.
You're
peanut
terrible.
Butter. And you want to make a fluffernutter? New England style. You get some fluff, which is made in Massachusetts, invented in Massachusetts, get it all over the world.
Whatever happened to your wife making bread? Did she?
She just started that nonsense again yesterday.
Did it stop?
Literally,
Why did it stop?
It pretty much stopped for a long time, except I asked her, I was like, why are these jars of whatever's in here still in the fridge? And she was like, well, I'm planning on getting back into sourdough making at some point in time. And then I wanted to throw them away. So she got back into trying to do that. She's got like jars of sourdough around the kitchen that need to be warmed up to room temperature. And then you put them in the fridge. It's crazy.
Did she ever actually successfully make a piece of sourdough bread?
Yeah. She made some sourdough. It's solid. I mean, it could be better.
But why'd she stop?
I don't know, man. That's what she does. She gets all into these new things, and then she gets out of them, then back in.
My wife's on a crock pot phase. She's like crock pot meals like twice a week lately. It's pretty nice. I like it. It's a little early though. It's not quite cold enough. I mean, yesterday it just got cold enough, but it's a little early in the season for it. But they're good.
And then we got a couple more rants here. Murphster 7, congratulations to Badlands Media on 2 years. Thank you for everything you guys bring to us. Thank you, Murphster. Then Robert L. Take a deep breath and realize how much you guys have done for the movement. That's all. Keep up the great work. That was a $50 rant. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is all of them.
The four Bidens, well, there's those two. The four Robins are Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Damian Wayne, who we talked about on Defected the other night.
Yeah.
And Tim Drake.
You just had to look that up yourself.
I did have to look up Tim Drake. I'm totally ashamed of it. He was the third Robin, and the reason I memory hold him is because he's the one that they retconned to make him gay. Because everybody's got to be gay now.
You know, speaking of looking stuff up, I'm still waiting for you to show me a report of the shark in the water, so I will wait on you to send that.
You know what? The burden of proof isn't on me. As Chris talks about with elections, the burden of proof is on you for refuting my claim that there are bull sharks in the streets of Tampa Bay right now at this moment.
The burden of proof is on you who make the claim that the sharks are real lawful American sharks in the streets of...
That's malinformation. One of the worst kinds of information.
It's not true.
You want the sharks to win.
Anyway, guys, good show. I got a clip. I don't even know what this is, but we're going to play it. So it's a short clip of Kamala Harris on Stephen Colbert. So.
Julie JN sent a rant in. I just made a loaf of sourdough bread and currently making bagels from my starter. Thanks, guys. That's what they call it, starter.
You're welcome for whatever we did to help with that. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Just doing our jobs, man.
We'll see y'all later.
Have empathy, man. For the suffering of other people. Have sense of purpose. Have empathy.